Hello, welcome once again to Everyday HDR. Today I'm going to do a tutorial on Topaz Adjust 5. Those who never used Topaz Adjust 4, they have come a long way between Topaz Adjust 4 and Adjust 5. Those of you who have used Adjust 4, if you don't have Adjust 5, there's a problem because this software is designed to make you an HDR post-processing well-oiled machine. And I don't suggest you try to do that tongue twister 10 times fast. So let's just get right into this. Topaz Adjust 5 is a program that it works its way right into your post-processing software like Photoshop, and it's right up in your filters. So in Filters, Topaz Labs, and Topaz Adjust 5. So let's just break down this interface real quick. In the upper left you have a preset thumbnail viewer. So as you go over these presets, it'll show you what it is that's happening to your image in a really quick way, so you know you don't have to click on it in order to see what's happening. You just see it right up in the preview up there. It's a pretty nice addition. One thing that Topaz has done has added 108 new presets on top of the ability to make your own collection of presets in a nice little collected way. Before, their presets were just kind of slewn about, but now they've categorized them, and it's really nice because we have this HDR collection here, and the most notable is this dynamic pop 2. I think this is a superb preset to making any HDR photo that I've put into it look 10 times better just off the bat. So if you want to see the before and after, you can click on before and after, or you can click on the spacebar. Sometimes it does a little too much to the image, but we can always work around that. Topaz has added a lot of great things into this to make this work. On the right you see your navigate. If you are in the 1:1 ratio, you can zoom around your image real quick navigating. I prefer to have it fit because I think that everything just happens a lot faster when it's fit. You have your histogram, so you can see, for us HDR dorks that love the curve, you can see how the adjustments that you're doing are affecting your curve. So we'll go ahead and stay on histogram because I kind of like that. Now here's your global adjustments. For those of you who don't know the difference between global and local, a global adjustment is something that is an adjustment that happens to the entire image as a whole. It affects everything. A local adjustment is, say you're masking out an area, or you're dodging an area, or burning an area. That's a local adjustment. You're doing it to a very small area. And it's kind of important to know the difference between local and global when you go into this adaptive exposure slider that Topaz has added into this. So adaptive exposure, think about how you would divide an image into multiple regions. So the region slider and the adaptive exposure work hand in hand together to enhance your image. The regions are the amount of area that your image is being covered. So the smaller the number, the larger the region, yielding less of an effect. So let's just go ahead and look at it real quick. It's kind of difficult to explain, but once you see it, it's pretty simple. So let's just go ahead and hit this adaptive exposure really high. I don't like it that high, but we'll put it up real high just so you can see the difference. Our regions are set to 25. If we set our regions lower, you see how it's doing less to the image because it's dividing it into larger sections. So it's doing less to the image. Now, if we increase it, it's doing a lot more to the image because it's dividing the image into much smaller sections. So each one of those adaptive exposures is happening on almost like in a grid. So if you look right down here, you can kind of see that grid where we've got these small boxes of black. The region slider is adjusting how much of the effect is going to have. So the smaller the regions, the more the effect. So let's just go ahead and reset all of that and go back to our dynamic pop because I don't like the way that looks. Okay, so on top of that you have contrast and brightness, which are very similar to the contrast and brightness slider that would be in pretty much any software. Then you have your details. You can boost the amount of detail that's happening in an image by strengthening the amount of detail that you're putting in the image and then boosting that detail. So you can get pretty ugly looking with this real quick. It's one of those things that you definitely don't want to go too far with. So let's just reset that. You can quickly reset all the adjustments that you've done here by pressing the reset button. And again, we can look at how we've come so far by pressing the space bar from our original image to now. So these are all pretty simple. you've seen a lot of this in any other post-processing software. It's just sliders for detail. So now color, they've done the same thing with the adaptive saturation and the color regions. Same thing. The higher the regions, the more you're going to be increasing the saturation in your image. So lots of saturation, and it's happening on a very smaller level at this point. So let's reset that, because I hate that. When I see highly saturated stuff, for some reason it's like sticking a 9-volt battery on my tongue. It really just kind of it zaps me. I don't like it. So you see here saturation and saturation boost. Those are pretty much the same that you would see in any other post-processing software. Then I have noise suppression. You can suppress the amount of noise that's happening in the image right here in Topaz Adjust, which is great because sometimes Topaz can get pretty on the noise level in your image. I mean, we can navigate right down to here and you can see that there's quite a bit of noise there, but you can start suppressing that noise by hitting the suppress button and adjusting the amount of noise suppression. But that happens globally. So any adjustment that you're doing there is going to happen to the entire image. So let's reset that. And then they've also added the curve tool in here, which is great because you can do your S-curve right here in Topaz and you don't have to worry about doing it later in Photoshop. So then you have local adjustments. In the local adjustments, you can dodge and burn and brush out areas that you don't want to hit globally. And you can adjust the strength of the effect that you're doing. So let's say we want to dodge out this area down here that's kind of getting hit pretty hard by what we've done. You can just slightly brush in and then change the overall strength later. And you can brush out those adjustments also. Pretty simple. These controls are going to modify your brush itself, and these controls are going to do your local adjustments. So this is pretty cool. This is something that Topaz has never done before. In the past, it's always been a global adjustment. It hasn't been anything local. Anything that you want to do local, you had to process and bring into Photoshop and locally adjust. So it's pretty cool that they've added that in there. And then they have the finishing touches. You can add diffusion, make it a little bit softer. You can add grain. You can change the transparency. This is awesome too, because if you've applied a preset that's just a little bit too strong and you don't want to process it and go into Photoshop and then come back in here to work on something later, you can always adjust the amount that preset is taking on the entire image as a whole globally. So that's great. You can add warmth to it. You can add a border to it, and border is really simple. You can pick a color from the image to add a border, or you can use a black border. Pretty neat. I'm sure it has some capability somewhere. Vignette. You can add vignettes right here. This is awesome because the vignettes in Photoshop, unless you're making them yourself, which I do all the time with a brush, the lens correction vignettes are very restrictive to what you can do with a vignette, whereas Topaz has added a lot more depth to those vignettes. You can change the vignette size. You can change the transition that's happening within the vignette in your image. You can adjust the curvature of that vignette. They've done a lot of great things with the vignetting in here. I like it, and these days a vignette makes every image go from being kind of boring to whoa, that's pretty cool. So, if you're one of those people that likes to use vignettes, which I am in a lot of cases, this is great because it's built right into your post-processing. Now, say you like what you've done. You can always save it. You can save the preset as for blog preset. Now, when I go into my collection, I have the fro blog. Pardon me, I can't spell when I'm under pressure. My fro blog preset. And you can use that at any time. I can click on that and have my fro blog preset. Now, there's something that's pretty cool with the I feel lucky. You can randomly generate parameters to happen on your image, and sometimes you get some pretty cool things. Other times it's not so happy. Other times it's pretty neat. And sometimes I'll just sit here and click and click and click until I find something that's pretty neat as a jumping off point, or I'll just go to one of the presets before, because they have added some awesome presets. So I'm going to reset that. Now, say you apply one setting. So I'm just going to go to my collection right now in my presets, and I'm going to go to HDR Review Topaz. and I press apply. What that's going to do is it's going to apply that preset directly to what I'm working with right now. And if I want to add another one, I can just click on another preset, and it adds that preset right to the previous preset that we added. Not to the original image that we brought in, but to the previous preset. So when I press spacebar, you're seeing the previous preset. So now you can press apply there. One of the great things about Topaz is that it can make a subtle HDR look great. Really easy and really quickly. I mean, a lot of this stuff you can do in Photoshop, but it's not so centrally located. Which that's why I love that I can just come right here and I can start adding effects. And if you're ever in this building that I was in, it was in an old abandoned hangar. It did look really dark and eerie. It was very dark. I think this exposure was about 3 seconds, plus or minus 2 EV. So we're going at sometimes down to 10 seconds of an exposure to get the color that I got in here. It was very dark. It was very creepy. It looked like something out of a horror movie. So what I'm doing here is actually applying some presets that actually made it look very similar to how creepy it was. So I like what's going on with this split tone and moody. So let's go to finishing touches. Not finishing touches, but where was it? Yeah, transparency. And let's increase that transparency a little bit because I don't like how much of an effect it's having. So now when we press apply, we've got ourselves a pretty interesting looking image. It's come a long way from where it was to begin with, but now I'm right here in Photoshop and I can play with it some more. So this was before, this is after. It's pretty edgy, pretty dark, but it's more of what I wanted when I saw it. So let's look at another way that I can explain these adaptive exposures. So I did say it was like a grid. So look at the regions on the left. You have a smaller amount of regions because it's divided into smaller sections, so the adjustments are happening on a smaller level when you adjust the adaptive exposure. But now on the right side we have a larger amount of regions because it's divided into a smaller amount. So the adaptive exposure is going to have a stronger effect in a local area, those localized squares. So that's a little bit more on adaptive exposure. So the image that you saw beforehand was just a straight out of Photomatic's plain Jane kind of boring looking HDR that took on a whole new value with this Topaz Adjust. So I hope you like what you've seen, and if anything, if you purchase Topaz Adjust 5, know that you're getting your $50 worth just with the dynamic pop preset. And it looks like Windows has detected that my computer's performance is slow. So I'm going to go ahead and call this good. Thank you for stopping by. Take care.